Death on the Nile is the latest adaptation of Agatha Christie's novel, and it's also acting as the sequel to the other adaptation of Murder on the Orient Express that we got a few years back. And it's following sort of the same crew, production, timeline actors wise. So we've got Kenneth Branagh returning as director and as the lead character, the detective Hercule Poirot. And with them being novels, there's been plenty of adaptations of them previously. So it's not like these are new films, but to me personally, I've never seen them before and I've never read the books. So these two initial films are my first experiences with these stories, which I think's a lot better. Which I think is better because it is a murder mystery, and the biggest part of a murder mystery is the mystery aspect. So obviously, if you know the story going in, you're not really getting that, and you're sort of just watching it for see how they've crafted the story and interpreted it, whereas to me it is completely original. And I was the same with Murder on the Orient Express as well, so I haven't looked at sort of any books or anything going into this, and I'll probably appreciate it a lot more than people who've seen like the countless variations they've done previously, or if they've read the books or whatever, because I don't know how much it deviates from the book or previous films or whatever. But I quite enjoyed this film. Like I said, we've got Kenneth Branagh returning to directing and performing as Hercule Poirot. And I think he does a pretty good job. I think he's quite a competent director. He's definitely not one of those actors that's just sort of giving it a go. He definitely seems to know what he's doing. Like, he's directed a few films I've seen and he always does a pretty good job. It doesn't feel amateur and it feels like he's a professional director as well as an actor. And his performance in this is great as well. He does a really good job of giving a sense of authority and respect to Hercule Poirot from the characters around him. Even though he's not necessarily an intimidating person, he is in a cerebral sense. And I think the film did a really good job of capturing that. And that's really all credit to him because he's the performance and he's directing the performance as well, if you get what I mean. So he did a really good job of characterising that character as someone you don't really want to mess with, but in terms of an intelligence way, and he's very smart and he's presented that way, but he's never presented as like a stupid smart where it makes no real sense. Like he seems logical and he does make mistakes, and I quite like that. And just like the previous film, Murder on the Orient Express, this has an all-star cast as well. And they're not necessarily A-listers, but it's a lot of people you know, and the names you recognise from previous works. Like, I pretty much recognised everyone on the cast. However, unfortunately, though, I don't think a lot of the cast get too much time to shine, which is a real shame because there is a lot of talent there, but the story is very much focused on a few of the characters more so than others, and the others are somewhat left behind, and they're just kind of there to sort of add a number to who it could be, if you get what I mean. Like, the main performances in this are definitely Gal Gadot, Arnie Hammer, and Emma Mackey. They're sort of, excluding Hercule Poirot, they're sort of the main characters in terms of the mystery plotline. Like, it very much revolves around those three characters, and the events of the film are based around those three characters' actions, which I think is a bit of a shame because it's great you get to see those three give great performances, but the rest of the cast somewhat gets sidelined and you don't really get invested in their characters as much. So a minor spoiler here if you want to go in completely blind, but there is more than one murder in this. And when some of the characters die, you don't necessarily care too much, if that makes sense, especially one of the deaths, because you didn't really know him that well, and they just kind of a glorified background character. They only had a small part, and I do wish maybe you could have established the other characters more, and maybe that would have been at the cost of taking it away from the main sort of three that the story revolves around, but maybe it was kind of needed to just add a bit more character to those people, because they didn't really have a lot to work with, and I think giving them more to work with would have meant you'd have cared more about them and maybe been more interested in those characters. But that's not a huge issue of the film. I just wish maybe more focus was put on the rest of the cast rather than just the main ones, because in a murder mystery you need to build up every single individual. However, what the cast are wearing is great. They've really captured the feel of the 30s, and that's down to just the costumes, the set, and also the way people speak. It doesn't feel like a lot of stuff where it's set in a time period where it feels like just actors putting on a costume and you can tell they're still in modern day. They've really put effort into crafting this time period in this world, and you do completely believe it. For not 1 second I thought we were in modern day. They did a really good job, and that's credit a lot to the costume and makeup and the set design of things. It very much fit that era. They did a great job of establishing the authenticity of that era, and I think that's something that some people might overlook, because to me, a lot of stuff now tries to modernize it and it puts it in modern times, and that does work for some stuff, but a lot of times that's quite lazy because we live in modern times, so it's easy to source modern looks or modern sets. Whereas when you're setting it in a time period, it's a real task to make sure it's authentic, and every single little aspect has to fit that time period. Nothing can be from modern day. And I think it did a really good job of taking on that challenge of going into a different era. It made me appreciate the film a lot more. And just like Murder on the Orient Express as well, this is set in a restrictive, claustrophobic location where you're trapped on this boat. And I think one of the things the Murder on the Orient Express didn't do too much as well, but I think this is more down to the story, is the danger aspect, as there is only a single murder in that I can recall. Whereas this one, like I said, not to get into too many spoilers, but more than one person dies, so the sense of unease and not being safe is really ramped up, which I really like, and it really helps that they're on this secluded, inescapable place because you can't go into river or whatever. But I wish it maybe played into that more. That sort of danger aspect only comes in towards the end, and I wish it played around with the paranoia of not trusting people a lot more. Because obviously paranoia is a big thing throughout the film, but to mix in a lethal danger that's like happening right now was a really clever idea. I just wish it lasted a bit longer and our characters felt like they're in more danger, especially Hercule Poirot. There's one sort of sequence where, it feels dangerous, but I wish that was extended a bit and been more part of the film where you're worried for the detective character. A lot of times they're sort of out of bounds in murder mysteries, and I like it when you put them in a position of risk. And this one only sort of scratches the surface of that, unfortunately. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this film. If you're looking for a murder mystery and you don't know the story at all, I think it's a great fun watch. It's probably not going to blow you away or be super memorable, but it's a fun experience and it's crafted very well, and it's not got any major flaws. It's just got nothing really outstanding either, if you get what I mean. So yeah, overall, quite a fun watch. I'd love to see them do at least a trilogy of this. Kenneth Branagh's Hercule Poirot trilogy. I'd love to see another one because it does feel like his passion project and something he really wants to put his heart into, and you can tell, It isn't one of them films where it feels like junk food films where it's just been produced. It feels like a lot of love's gone into this film, and clearly he's got some sort of personal interest in it, which I really enjoy. So hopefully for him, he gets to make the third film and we get a nice trilogy of these sort of Hercule Poirot cinematic, big budget versions of them. I think overall I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. I think that's down to it being a very well crafted film and a very well produced film. But to me personally, the story, I think, where it somewhat lies, and that's nothing against the film, but I think it could have been more interesting in areas, and it somewhat just scratches the surface. And, especially coming off Murder of the Orient Express, they are kind of similar stories, in closed spaces where there's a murder. There's similar ideas running there. And this one's unique enough to feel like it deserves to be made. So yeah, overall a fun watch, and give it a watch if you're feeling like watching some mystery film. It's great for that, you know what I mean? It really succeeds at its job in that aspect. So yeah, that's pretty much it. See ya.